President Trump's domestic agenda is now facing a new and major setback. This is on the budget and some of the things that Trump and the MAGA crowd want to ram through the budget, which is, despite everything going on, obviously, in the world, still Donald Trump and the Republican Party's greatest priority, getting this done somehow. And yet, as you're going to see in this breaking news, Republican senators are dealing with the setback in real time today.
Well, I mean, as you know, it's pretty frustrating, right?
Some of the stuff that she's striking, I have some real concerns.
Everything is challenging, but they're all speed bumps.
This is a very fluid situation.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised.
Well, this is a setback. I mean, I'm not going to play act. I didn't see this one coming.
A setback they didn't see coming, and because it's happening so fast in real time in a place where there are cameras rolling and journalists there to get the reactions, as you hear, some of them just being what sounds like honest about their disappointments. Others referring to the fact that in politics we're so used to what the senator there, Senator Kennedy, a Republican, called play acting, that sometimes you just say, it's really bad. So that's the headline, big picture, before you get into all the legal parliamentary mumbo-jumbo. What's happening is, under Donald Trump, Republicans are trying to do what he does in so many arenas, which is test things to the breaking point. Now, this isn't one where it's necessarily some alleged crime or insurrection, but that maximalism, that effort to ram things through has run into a type of wall. And the things they want to run through are also very much opposed, not only throughout the country, but even among some conservatives. We are talking about cutting health care in ways that would affect many people, including in red states. Some Republicans worried the cuts would also hurt their election chances when people figure out how much health care they're cutting before the next election. And why? Why do you need to do this right now? Again, there's a lot of problems in this country and abroad. Why would you scale back, for example, health care, including in red states? Well, part of the reason is they want to give massive tax cuts to multimillionaires and billionaires. So that means, when you total it all together, they would cut, if they got this budget through, $900 billion in health care out of Medicaid, and they would, of course, grow the deficit. But today, here's the news coming out of Washington. A ruling that half of those Medicaid cuts break Senate rules. And the Senate is still, even in this MAGA era where we hear that nothing matters, governed by a kind of a referee, a parliamentarian who enforces the rules. You cannot just jam anything through a tax or budget bill. The parliamentarian is the Senate's referee, their official advisor on rules and procedures, as the conservative-leaning Wall Street Journal explains. Quote, lawmakers are wary of setting rule-breaking precedents that a future majority could exploit. In a way, you can think of this just like any game. The senators are the athletes, and they're competing, and they go back and forth, and they have a battle. But there's still a referee they have to listen to. And it's almost funny sometimes when you watch a big athlete who seems in stature and stamina, certainly in fame and fans, bigger than the referee. That's what it's like. These are powerful senators. They have all kinds of big powers, but they got to deal with the ref. Just like a player in the NFL who has to follow rules enforced by their referee, or, if you follow this, parliamentarian. And sometimes the person who has that power over you, over at least the rule, can be, to use a famous Seinfeld term, someone who is going to tell you yes or no and almost lord it over you. In that extreme example, the joke was someone who enforced the rules of getting special soup so strictly, they started calling him the soup Nazi. Now, those are examples from sports or life where rules matter. And in this case, the ref is the Senate parliamentarian, someone who we almost never refer to by name or see their face, but they're supposed to do this job based on the rules, not on partisan calculations or what Donald Trump wants or what he tweets or puts on his social platforms. It's Elizabeth McDonough, and she's made this ruling. And the takeaway is, even as Trump and the Republicans try all sorts of shenanigans, this time here in the Senate, some rules still matter. This Senate official is blocking Republicans from using the bill to also try to fit in other stuff that has nothing to do with the budget. That's the basic line, and it's a nonpartisan line, that you want government to work, which means you don't want secret tricks and ploys. So they wanted to weaken the federal courts to undercut how things work, which is ironic given that this is a rule that stops them from sneaking in a non-budget item that would undercut other rules. The takeaway is Trump's in trouble because he wanted to pass this by Independence Day, that timeline in jeopardy. Fox News has polling showing most Americans oppose this, a 20-point gap. I'm going to leave that on the screen for a minute and remind you that whether people like it or not, Donald Trump won by about 1.5 points. So when he's losing here by 20 points compared to last November, that's a heck of a lot of Trump voters, conservatives, Republicans who have heard about this budget bill. They know it cuts health care. They know it gives tax cuts to the rich, and they oppose it. Now, Trump held a White House event to try to rally support for this embattled bill. Democrats have warned that while Trump talked about a lot of issues last year to get that 1.5 point victory, they warned this today, what he's being busted on and limited on, is exactly what he would do.
Donald Trump would sell this country for $1.
This guy wants to throw tens of millions of people off of the health insurance that they have.
Throwing tens of millions of Americans off of health care and cutting Social Security and Medicare.
He is going to make sure that taxes are cut for the millionaires, the billionaires, and the giant corporations.
He wants the middle class to pay the price for another huge tax cut that would mostly help him and his rich friends.
Those were claims. They were assertions. It's how politics works. And some might have heard them and thought, gosh, well, they don't want him to win for any number of reasons. Maybe they're exaggerated. Well, now we're here. The facts matter. People have to live with democracy and what happened in the voting. But all those claims you just heard, while they may have been offered in a campaign context, are being proven true. And compare that to what we just saw, that even in Fox polling, by 20 points, people oppose the stuff that was warned about. And that's not all. The Trump bill grows the deficit. Republicans showing a complete fiscal irresponsibility here. There's a special office that's nonpartisan which prices this stuff and saw it was going to be over $2 trillion juicing the debt in the initial assessment. Then they go through in more detail. These are long bills, and it's a process. And the number only has gone up. Now, by late June, we're learning it's over $3 trillion added to everything here, according to CBO.
Joining us now are Democratic Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts and Democratic Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager-Dove of California.
Representative Kamlager-Dove, it is not just that they're talking about overruling the parliamentarian. You actually have conservatives who are saying it's time to fire the parliamentarian. If the best they can do is complain about the refs, what does that tell you about their legislation?
Well, the parliamentarian was doing her job, thankfully, and she threw out some hot messes that were in that bill. One of it was to punish states who are actually trying to find more ways to provide health care for their constituents, and a snarky little piece that actually would limit judges' abilities to issue nationwide injunctions. So I don't even know why that was in there in the first place. So, of course, if you can't talk about the merits of the bill, you go after the woman. It's shameful, but that's all Republicans know how to do.
So, Congresswoman Presley, you guys have done your work. So right now, you're sitting back in the House going, we tried to tell y'all this was going to be a hot mess.
That part.
But they wouldn't listen. So you have Republicans out here calling for the firing of the parliamentarian. But then you have Senate Majority Leader John Thune about that idea, quoting, no, that would not be a good option for getting a bill done. You think? And so the fact that the Republicans find themselves in this position is one thing. What is the opportunity here for Democrats right now on this particular sticking point that Republicans find themselves?
Well, you know, I would just say that public outcry is important, and we need people to. As Democrats, we have never seen this dark vision for the country, seen this big, ugly bill as an inevitability. We have to reject it and resist it at every turn. And Republicans need to stop trying to railroad this bill through, and in turn railroad the American people by denying them health care and food and perpetuating this legacy they seem so hell-bent on creating of making people hungrier, poorer, and sicker. And so what they need to be doing is going back to their districts and listening to their constituents. Constituents like, I'll give an example. There's Layla, a young girl with a rare kidney disease in my district who received a kidney transplant at one of the hospitals in my district, and it saved her life. She will have to be on immunosuppressant drugs for the rest of her life. Her family pays for those drugs through Medicaid. And if these cuts happen, I shudder to think what would happen to Layla, who is thriving right now and has a future. But I know her family, if these cuts happen, they will go bankrupt fighting to ensure that their baby girl is okay, but they shouldn't have to. And so Republicans need to stop trying to railroad this through. They need to go back to their districts. They need to listen to their constituents. They need to be more focused on doing a job than keeping it.
It would lay down a little bit of ruling regarding the ability of states to block Medicaid money. The judges found that while Medicaid law allows people to choose their own provider, that does not make it a right enforceable in court. The court split along ideological lines, with the 3 liberal justices dissenting in the case from South Carolina. The AP, of course, notes that funding cuts to Planned Parenthood in the bill would force the closure of about 200 centers, most of them in states where abortion is legal. So you have now this other piece that's being layered on top of the storylines around, as you pointed out, Congresswoman, the impact it has on individuals in communities across the country, especially in rural parts of America.
Yeah. We have here fundamentally is Donald's bill failing after the parliamentarian ruling, as the budget is still going through all of these debates, the parliamentarian saying that before this even fully finishes committees and all of that, before it goes down to the actual vote, blah, 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 a lot of it's floundering. Because one, there's the political side of it, right? That's the political side. It doesn't have the votes right now. It's not going to pass either because it's too extreme or not extreme enough, right? Depending on who you ask in the GOP Senate. And then when it goes back to the House, the same thing's going to happen. Democrats are united against it, and some Republicans will reject it because, they're trying to win moderate districts, and cutting Medicaid to give tax cuts to billionaires isn't popular. Shocker, right? Or they're in deep red districts. They're worried about the MAGA wrath, and the cuts aren't extreme enough. And so the same thing's going to happen. But then the parliamentarian is also saying, look, even if there were the votes, this bill breaks certain provisions. And the Republicans are getting a little taste of their medicine. Remember, Biden, wanted to put certain provisions in his budget bill, like around the minimum wage and whatnot. And the parliamentarian said no. And that gave the excuse to the moderate Democrats, who we should still blame, and not just Manchin and Sinema, but I believe it was the Maggie Hassan also, and Jean. They voted against it as well. 8 Democrats voted against the minimum wage because it could be separated from Biden's wider bill. They didn't have to make the tough choice. They just aligned with Republicans and in favor of the capitalist class. So this has happened before to Biden, and now it's happening to Trump. And it's delicious to watch because on both procedure and on policy, the fascist dictator's getting pushback, and he's ripping his orange hair out over it.